والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني ومشرب صوفي الهاني يا وهاب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني ومشرب صوفي الهاني يا وهاب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدني ومشرب صوفي الهاني يا وهاب يا غني. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. أمين أمين يا رب العالمين. الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله. We continue our book من كتاب خلقنا تأليف الحبيب عمر بن محمد بن سالم الحفيظ بن شيخ بن سالم حفظه الله تعالى وأدام الله نفعه فينا في الدارين. I find from the book Khuluquna, our moral constitution, our character, inshallah, by the great scholar of Allah, by the great scholar of Islam, by the great scholar of Islam, Al-Habib Umar bin Muhammad bin Salim bin Hafiz bin Sheikh Abu Bakr bin Salim. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him and prolong his benefit in us in both abode till where he has said. We have reached now. So we have finished the four different types of human beings, and we went on from there, right, into the other types, into the other aspects of our character with the creation. As we're on the part of character with the creation, and we're finishing that section soon, and then we'll be entering into our character with ourselves. Right, so the book, there are three main sections to this book. It's a very small book. The first part being our character with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like how we are with our creator. Then we went into our character with the creation. And now we're finishing that. Right? And then we're going to go into our character with ourselves, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, right, so yesterday we were at number 17, correct? And number 17, right? With regards to our loyalty and support are for those who are loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So it is not, it's unbecoming. Right? It is unbecoming for a Muslim, right, to dislike another Muslim or to run down another Muslim, just because you're jealous of them or just because you have, some issues, just because, no, it is unbecoming, completely unbecoming, right, for a Muslim to behave in that way, right? Whoever is striving, to whoever is striving in the da'wah of this religion, in the spread of this religion, the da'wah of people towards this religion, then we are striving side by side with this person, and we are putting our effort to support this person. Okay, I suppose to understand that no matter who they are, right, no matter who they are, if they are striving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will also strive together with them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like that in our religion, especially in the field of da'wah, there is no place for jealousy, and there is no place for hatred, there is no place for resentment, there is no place for animosity at all. And if somebody were to be experiencing this in their hearts, then towards someone that all they do, this person, all they do is striving with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then get yourself checked. Really get yourself checked. Why are you feeling negativity towards someone that what they are doing is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like, what's wrong with you? I ask myself, what's wrong with you? Why do you dislike so and so? When what they are doing is calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tamam. The next point that we have, right, we will strive to the utmost in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our words, actions, wealth, and selves. This is our way and our motto. This is motto here, mashallah. Shi'ar, right? The way here is shi'ar. Right, so نجاهد في سبيل الله بأقوالنا وأفعالنا وأموالنا وأنفسنا وذاك هو طريقنا وشعارنا. right? So what this is the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So striving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give yourself almost, unpackage the word striving, right? Striving nujahid fi sabilillah. Right? So striving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, is the primary meaning of jihad, which is a physical, military engagement, right? To fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But of course, when you expand the word jihad, when you expand the word striving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the whole point of jihad, and if you understand what is jihad, the whole point of jihad is da'wah. It's to call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the military expeditions that happened, especially at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like all of these were just branches of da'wah. They were types of da'wah. Right? They were types of da'wah, which gives us an understanding of what is jihad. Like there are types of da'wah. And basically, there are types of da'wah. And da'wah, in the fiqh da'wah, if you see the understanding of da'wah, was there from the very beginning of Islam. Even before, like this is fiqh al-usul, even before the formulation of the sciences of Islam, the aqidah and sharia and tasawwuf and so on. The first thing first that came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was da'wah. Because the moment the Quran, was sent down to him, the first five verses of Surah Alaq, what was on him already? And what was immediately on him already to inform the people, right? He didn't inform everyone, right? That was not immediately on him, but to inform those who were closest to him, yes, right? He had the obligation to inform those who were closest to him that he is a prophet right now. Right? And that they need to follow him, they need to obey him because he is a prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right. So subhanallah, so the understanding of putting in your all for the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the spread of his religion, and that is from the beginning of Islam. Even before anything was formulated in the Sharia of Islam, in the Aqidah of Islam, before anything at all, I came the da'wah, calling people to Islam. Now, right. So this is our understanding, and this is our understanding. So Al-Habib, he says it of our akhlaq with the people around us, meaning in you being sincere to the people around you, right? To strive your very best, to give your all, right, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, however you do it, in whatever way or form that you do it. Right, in that way, bil aqwal, right? So in words. And now we are in a zaman whereby our words are all typed out. Now, words are all online, right? So in words, however you do it in words. Some people they make posters, they make, they do posts, right? They find ways, right, to call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in words, you only say what brings the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we understand that for da'wah, when it comes to calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you don't mix, you don't mix halal and haram. And some people they go into the haram thinking that with the way of the haram they can call more people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. No. There is no such thing as calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you are disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they cannot be. That is not possible. And so you can't be calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you are disobedient. Itu Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Now, and bil aqwal wa af'al, same thing also, so af'al in your deeds, in your actions. I service, khidmah, these are all strong ways in calling people to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, in assisting people, right? In what else in your af'al, right? In making things, in cooking, in whatever you do, right? In your da'wah towards people. Then amwal, I am while spending your way in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we know, many projects out there, many, many projects out there that require funding. They require funding. So if you're earning some money, right, then it is best for you, right, to go with these projects, and to go for this to direct your money, like in the way of these projects, right, in the way of funding them, right, and to call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the way of the Sahaba, the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, especially like for example, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Uthman. Like these were people that they would give so much of their money in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it could be that the amount of money that you spend and that you really, really put money in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like for Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, like he would give all of his money and leave nothing behind. And there's a story about Sayyidina Umar, whereby there was an expedition, there was a jihad and they had to go for an expedition. And all of this require funding. And they all require funding. They all don't think that, that projects only in our zaman that they require funding. No, 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 no. Like so from the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, like they will have like big projects that they will be doing, and it all requires funding. You need people to actually put their money in, right? So and the Rasulullah would announce to the companions that we're going for jihad, we're going for this, we're going for that, right? We need funding. Like he would actually announce to the people that we need funding, right? And they'll go back and they will see what they can give, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. So Sayyidina Umar, he goes back, so Rasulullah, he announces, that there is funding needed for one of the expeditions, that they're going to go quite far, right? So because you're going to go quite far, you need money, right, for animals, to carry transportation, any transportation to carry the army. You also need funding for food. You need to feed the army, right? You need also funding for weapons, right, to go and find with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is where all the funding comes in. And even then, right, they were so poor in the way they were, the Muslims, that they will fight really with wood and with their spears and with their arrows with no swords, and so on. So Sayyidina Umar, he went back to his house, he took all of his wealth, right? He took half of it and he left half, right? So he took half of it. He's going to give his entire half, I do, the way of is the way of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala in sadaqah. And so he left his house thinking, today, finally, today, I'm gonna beat Abu Bakr. So he is thinking, he wants to, outdo Sayyidina Abu Bakr anhu. This is friendly competition. This is not trying to run each other down, right? But it's friendly competition. And so he was like, today I'm going to finally, today I'm gonna outdo Abu Bakr. And so he goes to the masjid, he feels very happy about himself. He gives Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam all of the wealth that he had. Right? And I mean, whatever he was carrying. And the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked him, what do you leave for your family? And the Rasulullah, he will always ask this question because not everybody is able to give all, especially their families, they can't take it. And so there are many instances whereby someone comes and gives everything to Rasulullah and he actually rejects part of it and he gives it back to them. And he will say to them, give it to your family. Leave it for your family. Because he knows that they're not able to take it. The family, they need some wealth left behind for them. So Rasulullah asked Sayyidina Umar, what do you leave for your family? And Sayyidina Umar says, half of my wealth, ya Rasulullah. I only brought half. So I left half of my wealth. Even half is a lot, if if you think to yourself right now, right, all your wealth, literally Bakr, of course, he knows, right? But he asked Sayyidina Abu Bakr, what do you leave behind for your family? And Sayyidina Umar is listening in. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr says, Allah and His Prophet. Right? I left for my family, Allah and His Prophet. Meaning he gave 100% of his wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Rasul, he smiled, right? And he knew Sayyidina Abu Bakr, his family, they can take it. Right? They can take it. They can have nothing in their hands and they're fine. Right? They can survive like that. Subhanallah. Yesterday I was showing the video about I think Habib was it Habib Bakr who was saying this. He was saying about I think it was Habib Bakr now. Like he was saying about how, there was this Westerner that came to Yemen, parts of Yemen, and they're from the West and they were doing some field research, on the social living standards of the Yemenis being the poorest Arab nation in the world. Ya Allah. Right? I mean, they were doing some field research, on this, and they were so amazed. I'm really amazed. They were amazed that these people, they're living on almost nothing. Like really, literally, they're so poor. Some of them, really, some of them, they are so poor, right? And they're just so amazed that how are they not dying? Like how are they going day to day? Right? They are way below the poverty level, the poverty line to survive, right? Like how are they surviving? And he will ask the people, like, how do you get by day to day? In a war zone, people are striking them and they are boycotting them and so on and so forth. And they are not bothered at all. And then he asked them, and they said that, well, Allah is the one who maintains us. We have no fear. Allah is the one who maintains us. We have no fear at all. And he wrote in his, this is his person, he said to his friends, he wrote in his conclusion that truly God is with the Yemenis. Like God is with them. And because they are not, like they are being supported somehow. And I said you mentioned that, exactly the same if so many places on this earth, whereby Muslims are being oppressed and tortured, like especially in Gaza, in Sudan, in other parts of the world, the Muslims and these people, they are being, oppressed in the worst way. And you find them surviving, and you're just like, subhanallah, they're surviving. How is that? It's subhanallah, and this by Allah's permission and by Allah's power. Allah subhanahu provides. So anyways, Bakr, he does what he does. So Amar, he says in this hadith, right, he says that, and from that day I never tried to outdo Abu Bakr. I can't. I know I can't. I cannot outdo Sayyidina Abu Bakr anhu. Sayyidina Umar is Sayyidina Uthman, afwan. Sayyidina Uthman, in the same battle, it was the same battle. Sayyidina Osman, he came with so much wealth. It wasn't all his wealth, but he came with so much wealth. I think it was like 1,000 camels, and like they're all laden, with supplies and everything. He came with that amount of wealth, and he gave it fi sabilillah. And the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because Sayyidina Osman, and he's a rich person, and he's a rich young man, like in Mecca, in Medina at that time. So Rasulullah was so pleased with the contribution of Sayyidina Uthman. This is something you learn in fiqh Hawlat. You should learn this in the science of the end of times. Right? They are called hasanat. Right? They're called hasanats. Basically, which means what's the English word for it? They are called immunities, right? Immunities, right? Because at this point in time, Sayyidina Uthman, he comes to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He has all of this, wealth. He gives it in the way of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It makes the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam so happy that he said, "La yadur." Right? Then nothing can harm Uthman ba'da yawm hada, and ba'da yawmihi hada. Like nothing that Uthman does after today can harm the position of Uthman. Now, he made that statement, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made that statement. So nothing after today, after this day, after this deed of his, like nothing after today can harm the position of Sayyidina Uthman. I mentioned this story because really, you don't know what deeds that you do in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that bring the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, like that place you on a permanent pedestal, on a permanent position. With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you just got it. Like khalas, you hit something so high that Allah is so pleased with you, and that just sealed your fate for you. You never know, You never know. Like we know the people who fought in the Battle of Badr, right? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, perhaps Allah look into their hearts. And perhaps Allah said to the people who fought in the Battle of Badr, do as you wish for the rest of your life. Do as you wish, for you are forgiven. I mean, because these are all hadiths from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that show us that there could very well be deeds that you do. And by these deeds, khalas, you have just secured your position in paradise. I mean, they are because you see it in the history, but you don't know for yourself because the Prophet ﷺ is not around to tell you that khalas, your fate is sealed, you are in paradise, you're in this position, well, khalas. No, we don't know that, but we do know that they exist. Like there are deeds that you could just do it, like a one-off, and by these deeds, and usually it depends on how much sacrifice you put in, how much, like I mean, really, how much of yourself you really, spend with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it pleases Allah so much, right, that khalas, you are secured on the day of judgment, you are secured. I so never, this week, yesterday we mentioned this in class, never belittle good deeds, right? Never belittle. You don't know which one of your good deeds, that it was that deed that you put in effort, and you just like it was so hard on you, but you did it anyway. It could be that very deed is the one that will cause for your salvation, like in the hereafter, the day of judgment. Right. So Sayyidina Uthman, he got what is called al-hasana. Hasana meaning an immunity from Rasulullah, where he said, لا يضر عثمان ما فعل بعد يومه هذا. Like nothing can harm Uthman in his position, what regardless of what he does, no matter what he does in his lifetime, Sayyidina Osman, like nothing will harm his position after this day of his. Like he has secured his position with khalas, like by that great amount of wealth he gave out in charity. And this statement of Rasulullah SAW is very important, right? Because comes a time you go into the future, of the life of the Sahaba, after the death of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, after the death of Sayyidina Abu Bakr, after the death of Sayyidina Umar, and now you're Sayyidina Uthman. And Sayyidina Uthman is ruling, and Sayyidina Uthman, the amount of time that he ruled as Caliph, as Khalifa, is equal to Sayyidina Abu Bakr plus Sayyidina Umar together. Like even to memorize it, right? You just memorize Sayyidina Uthman, his caliphate is equals to Sayyidina Abu Bakr plus Sayyidina Umar, right, together. Right, Sayyidina Abu Bakr is about 2.5 years, thereabouts. Then you have Sayyidina Umar about 10 years. Right, Sayyidina Uthman is add them together. Right, so about 13 years his rule. Sayyidina Uthman, upon Sayyidina Uthman. Sayyidina Uthman, the first 10 years of that rule was peace. It was peace. It was the golden years of Islam. Islam spread far and wide. They conquered lands. For 10 years, it was smooth sailing. Sayyidina Uthman. Then only in the final years before he was finally assassinated, Sayyidina Uthman, that things went downhill. Fitna occurred. People were spreading lies about Sayyidina Uthman, causing the Muslims to rise up against him. So, radiallahu anhu wardahu. But if someone had heard or they knew of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then they would have stayed away from the uprising in Sayyidina Uthman, because they have heard Rasulullah say that nothing will harm the position of Uthman till the end of time. Nothing will harm his position, no matter what he does. Right? So people were making it halal to kill him, because they were claiming that he is murtad, he is this, he is that, and this whatsoever about Sayyidina Uthman. They were making rulings on him, they were judging him. Right? But had someone who understood the statement of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they would not dare touch Sayyidina Uthman with their tongue or with their hands. They would not blame him, nor would they harm him in any way. But that was the history, of Islam. It was something that was prophesied by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and it will come to pass, and it came to pass, right? Right. So so yes, right. So basically, yeah, that's what I just said. Right, there are deeds that you don't know what they are, right? And it helps you in this dunya, right? So can we ask Allah for a certain dua to be answered based on your deeds? Yeah, you can do a tawassul with your deeds, yes. Right, definitely. Definitely a tawassul with your deeds, right? It's something that is we spoke about this, I think, a few weeks ago about tawassul when I explained what is tawassul. Like you can very well do deeds and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Ya Allah, by these deeds, grant me this and grant me that," and you make a dua. Yeah, you can. It's very much established in the religion that tawassul through good deeds. That is why we do our 41 Yasins. Like 41 Yasin is basically tawassul through the 41 Yasins. You do 41 Yasins, and then you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Ya Allah, by these Yasins that you love." That is also why we do a khatam. When you do a khatam of the Quran and you do dua after that, right? So you're doing a tawassul with the khatam that you give out in charity and you make dua after that, right? Any of these good deeds, even salat hajat, so that you have a need, you pray 2 rak'ahs, then you make a dua. You are actually essentially you're doing tawassul by your 2 rak'ahs. Now you're essentially doing that. Now you're doing the 2 rak'ahs first, and then you make a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you whatever you need, right? And by those 2 rak'ahs that you have just performed. And we went through the different proofs, in Islam as to the companions, when they had needs, and Rasulullah would say to them, "Go and pay 2 rak'ahs, then dua in this way." And he was teaching them basically do a good deed and then make your dua. Okay, right? So does it count as blessings to give your friends and family gifts? And then yeah, you can. I mean, you can give gifts to people around you, and it counts as charity. Basically, the definition of charity, if you really want to go by sadaqah, charity, it has to go to someone who is poor. right? Someone who is poor. Right? And then someone asked me a question previously, whether, if let's say you have money to give out in charity, but you have family members, who are struggling to get by or they have debt, like is it counted as charity that you give to these family members? And the answer is yes, definitely. And in fact, you get double the reward. Why? Because you get the reward of charity and you get the reward of Silatul Rahim. Right? So all the more your family members are the first people, like they are the most deserving of your charity. They are the most deserving of your charity. There is a story that happened to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, like whereby Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was going past. He had his classes with the woman exclusively. Right, because the women were complaining to him, right? That, oh, the men hog you, the men keep taking your time, and they just sit around you and they don't let us get through. Right. So the woman they had asked Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, put aside time for us, right? Just as the men are not allowed to come. Right, don't let the men come. And Rasul said, Afal, and he said, I will do that, and he did it. Like he would have, just it's called Jalsatun Nisa, and it's something that Habaib do. I mean, the Mashayikh, they have this every where they go, and every single week they will have something called Jalsatun Nisa, right? Whereby, and this is from the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, whereby they will have a day specifically for the women. Habib Mashur, he used to have it twice a week in the Faqih here when he was alive, may Allah have mercy on his soul. But he used to do it twice a week, and the women would all, or they would all come to the Faqih, and he was just have it mature, teaching women. The men are not allowed to come. And it is walking the way of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So even our Habai, when they come to Singapore, when they come to Malaysia, they will have that special jalsa, with the women, and that is just following the sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So anyway, in this one of the jalsa, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says to the woman, "O woman, give out in charity. For I see the majority of the inhabitants of the hellfire to be your kind, O woman." It means to be women. Right? The majority of the inhabitants of the hellfire are women. Right? And Rasul Sallallahu says this out of love. Like, so he's not blaming women and he's not like, running them down. No, as some woman is so defensive. You can't say a single thing and you're like, oh, he's against women. Oh, he's being, male chauvinist. Oh, he's being, oh, whatever they want to say. Like, no, Rasul Sallallahu he's loving. He's being loving. Right? So he saw something, as a matter of fact. He saw something when he was in Isra and Miraj. Like he saw something that was a matter of fact. Majority of the inhabitants of hellfire are women. Well, khalas, you can't change that. He saw it. He saw it. He saw in the hellfire that the majority of the inhabitants are women. So he's saying it to us as a matter of fact. He's saying it to us as warning us, and he gave us solution. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He gave us solution, and he said that give out in charity. That is the way that you repel the hellfire. Give out in charity. In another hadith, he said, give out. And he said to the companions, give out in charity to repel the hellfire. And the Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, we're so poor. Ya Rasulullah, we're so poor. We can hardly even feed ourselves. And Rasulullah would say, repel the hellfire even if half a date. I repel the hellfire even if half a date. Don't belittle any form of charity that you could do. So basically the women, they went back to their homes and they began to pull out their wealth. And they have wealth, this woman, they have wealth. And they began to pull out their wealth to give out charity fi sabilillah. Right. And after some time, there was the wife of Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud, right? The wife of Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud, her name is Zainab, and she comes to the house of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. She asks for permission, right, to enter and to ask Rasulullah a question. And at the point in time, there was another woman that was with her. Like, so Sayyidina Bilal was there. Sayyidina Bilal was kind of like, guarding over the door of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And she came and she said, ask Rasulullah for permission for me to enter. I have a question. Right? And Sayyidina Bilal asks, and Rasulullah gives her the permission. She comes in and she says, Ya Rasulullah, I have wealth, like jewelry. I have wealth. And I took out my wealth to give out in charity, as you told us today to give out in charity. But Ibn Mas'ud, who is the husband, and Ibn Mas'ud, he said to me, it is better that I give my charity to him and to my son than I give to someone out there. Is he right? Okay, so Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud is so poor. Right? He is so incredibly poor. He's in poverty, Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud. And so his son, who is from the same wife, is their son, they're all poor. They're all very poor, right? So she has some wealth, this woman, the wife of David was, she has some wealth, her inheritance or her jewelry or someone give it to her, whatever it is. So Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud is a faqih. And Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud, he is a scholar in Islam in himself. He is a scholar in the Quran, scholar in Islam, but he is just that poor. He's so poor, Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud. Right? So he said to her, correctly, is correct. And he said to her, you know, you giving money to us, to me and your son, is better for you than giving charity out there, right? And of course, think what is it? People think that is it cheating that I give charity right into my family, right? Is it like kind of like cheating? No, 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 because it's not her obligation to support her husband nor her son, right? It's not her obligation to support her husband and her son. It's not her obligation. That is why giving when she gives the wealth to them, it counts as charity. It actually counts as charity. A woman, understand is a woman, a woman giving wealth to her family to help them in their finances is constant charity. It's constant charity from you, right? Because it's not your obligation, but you do it, right? You earn some money, you go to work, you to help your husband out, you support the family, you pay for expenses. It counts as charity on you. It counts as charity. Mashallah, I mentioned before one of my classes that someone had this woman, she was complaining so much, about how she has to help her husband, with the finances because he's struggling to get by. So she's helping him. And she was complaining so much, saying that, oh, and he hardly buys for me gifts. He hardly brings me on vacations. He hardly brings me here, hardly does it. And my friends, they're always getting gifts. And my friends, they're always going for fancy vacations. And my friends, they're always, and I'm like, Subhanallah. I said to her, I said, Subhanallah. So many, like, you're comparing with your friends, and you're running down your husband in that way. Like, aren't you pleased that you walked the way of Sayyidah Khadija? You walked the way of Sayyidah Khadija, and it's your wealth, and you're helping out your husband, support the family. Aren't you happy that you're walking that way, the way of Sayyidah Khadija? Like, does it matter that much to you that he buys you gifts and brings you on vacations? Right? Does it really, like, do you really want all those jewelry? They say, oh, my friends get all kinds of jewelry and this and that and whatsoever. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Ya Allah. So anyway, Sayyidah Zainab, she asked Rasul the question, and Rasul said to her, and he affirmed what Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud said. He said, Ibn Mas'ud is correct that when you give your charity to your family who are not your dependents, it says that it's not your obligation to support them. Right? It's not your obligation to support them, but you give them anyway, right? And he said that you get double the reward. You get the reward of charity and the reward of slatur rahim. I think someone recently asked me a question that that she and the husband, they are giving charity regularly every month, and they found out that their father or the husband's father was actually in debt, trying to pay off his debt. So she asked the question, is it counted that they give the father money to pay off his debts? And I said, of course, of course, of course. And he's even more, deserving of it. And you giving your father money to pay off his debts, right? You get the reward of charity, yes. You get the reward of Situl Rahim, yes. You get the reward of Birrul Walidain. You get the reward of being good to your parents, of righteousness towards parents, Birrul Walidain. I mean, you get 3 times rewarded. I mean, who doesn't want that? Subhanallah. So it is an understanding that yes, helping out your family, your friends, it does fall under charity. In fact, it's of the highest forms of charity, right? Of the highest forms of charity. Of course, buying a gift for people who are not in need, it does not fall under charity because it falls under gift, right? So gift is basically giving something to those who are not actually in need. Charity, the definition is to give to those who are in need. That is charity, right? To those who are in need, regardless if it's your family or someone else. Okay, so if you buy stuff for people, it falls under gifts. Right? And gifts are also any part of the Sharia as well, but it's not charity. You don't count it as charity. Tamam. Okay, tamam. We'll start for today, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. So tomorrow we're going to go into نهتم بتربية أبنائنا. ما شاء الله. The important, it is wajib on us, right, to look into the upbringing of our children. wajib on believers. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. أن الله يرزقنا منافع وأعمالنا خالصا وقس علينا من الهدى ويسر بالإنسان وأرواح معلمنا ومشايخنا وذوي الحق علينا وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. الفاتحة. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله